Hello, and welcome to Kickstart. Today, we have our rip over video as we're going to be covering our Extruded Product Builder and our Smart Layer Manager, two tools within our solid modeling tools that's going to help you create your 3D extruded masterpieces. As I said before, and as I will say another 1,000 times, I am Ludwig from Microbolum, and let's kickstart this extrusion. So here we are back in our Kickstart project and in our aptly named Extruded Product Builder room. At the moment, I've got absolutely nothing, but we need to change that by adding in some 2D drawings onto our screen. Now, these 2D drawings are going to be a 2D representation of what we would like extruded. So we're going to start off with some Autocad shapes, primarily a rectangle. We're going to go over here, click on this point, and you can see some text boxes are appearing near my rectangle. This is what we call dynamic input. In fact, you can see there's a little symbol down here where it's highlighted blue. Now, if you can't see this symbol down here, if we go over to this customization button, make sure you have dynamic input ticked, and then make sure you have this guy over here set to blue. This will allow you to actually input the dimensions of your rectangle. So I can make this guy over here 3 mil thick. If I hit tab on my keyboard, I can then make him 1 meter long. Like that. Now I can go ahead and copy this rectangle. Just going to go over to my blue fingerprint, use my Autocad Copy, click on this guy over here, hit enter. Just going to move this guy across and copy him 150 mil away. Go to hit enter to end the command. And I'm just going to click on this rectangle over here because I kind of want to raise him up 100 mil. Click on him. You can see there's a nice little rectangle in there that I can click on. Move my mouse in the direction I would like to stretch or unstretch this rectangle here. Next, we're going to draw in another rectangle. So we're going to go back to our blue pen, back to our rectangle, click on this point over here. I'm going to make him 50 mil long by 16 mil thick. We're going to, you guess it, draw another rectangle. It's going to click on this point over here and make him 16 mil thick, 116. And can you guess what I'm going to do? Rectangle. Another rectangle, because why not? We just love those things over here. So we're going to make this guy over here 81 wide by 16 mil thick. And we're going to shuffle across to the top here for one final rectangle. So we're going to make this guy over here. How long is that? 147 by 16 mil thick. Actually, that's meant to be negative 16. Because I'll bring that downward. If I put 16, it'll just be up here, not the end of the world, just move it down. Worst comes to worst. Now, at the moment, I'll be dealing with rectangles. Now, what happens if I want to deal with an irregular shape? For example, I want to put a shape within this area here. So it's not going to be completely square. That's fine, as long as it's a closed polyline. So I'm going to go over to my pen, I'm going to go over to my polyline. I'm going to go start at this corner over here. I'm just going to trace over the inside of my stud wall. It's going to go from point to point, just left clicking on these points here. Now, when I'm at the last point here, I'm just going to type in CL for close. And that's going to make it one closed polyline. Now, I've got a 2D representation of what I would like to extrude. I'm happy with that for now. But next, I need to draw where I would like it to extrude along. So I'm just going to move a bit to the right over here, and I'm going to draw another polyline. I'm going to start up the top here, click at this point, and I'm going to draw a line first going 3 meters down. Type that in, enter, move along to the right. I'm going to make this guy over here 2 meters long for return. And I'm going to go up here, but this time I'm going to type in A for arc, and I'm going to create an arced line. Again, I'm going to make this arc 2 meters wide. Hit enter, and there is my construction path. So I've got a 2D representation of what I would like, and I've got where I would like to extrude it along. Now, just for ease and convenience, a bit of a personal preference, I'm going to go over to this blue cube over here, and I'm going to click on this guy to add another viewport. I'm going to have, as you can see, another viewport. I'm going to position this guy in a bit of a southwest view so I can have a look in my 3D model as well as my 2D model at the same time. Groovalicious. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use our Extruded Product Builder. So we're going to go over to our solid modeling tab over here, And we're going to click on Solid Modeling Tools. And this is going to bring up our solid modeling tools. Just going to position them over here, like so. Excelente. It's going to get myself nice and set up. There we go. Ready to rock and roll. Now at the moment, similar to how we started, he's quite bare bones. That's because we need to add an extruded product within this option over here. So we're going to do exactly as he's asking us to, right click to add. So we're going to right click inside here and select add. Pretty self-explanatory. This guy's going to pop up and it's going to ask us to give a name to our extruded product. I'm going to go ahead and call this one stud wall. Now, just need to make sure that in this drop-down list, I have extruded product starter selected. Going to click that and hit OK. Next, it's going to ask my command line to select a construction path. And that's going to be this polyline that I drew before. Click on him. It's going to ask me that, well, I can't see any smart layers detected. Would you like to import some? I'm going to say no in this case because we're going to actually create our own layers using the Smart Layer Manager. So we're going to select no. And you can see it's now created a stud wall, except there's no studs, just a construction path and extruded parts and vertical parts, as well as supplemental. However, there's nothing in them. So we're going to add some extruded and vertical parts. We're going to click on extruded parts. We're going to right click and we're going to select add. Now that's when this guy over here comes into play and we're going to highlight over our 2D image. And next we're going to highlight and hit enter. Now we've got a separate pop-up and this guy over here, this guy is our Smart Layer Manager and he's going to help us tell what the 3D extrusions are going to be. Are you going to be studs? Are you going to be stretched extruded panels? What kind of panels? All of that's going to be controlled through our Smart Layer Manager. So we've got two options to select from, vertical entities and extruded entities. Now you can see in my 2D image, that closed polyline that I created is highlighted. So he's asking me, what do I want to make out of this guy here? This guy is going to be some vertical studs going along my extruded product. So he's going to be a vertical entity. To add one in, we're going to right click inside the vertical entity box and we're going to select add. Now it's going to ask me to set some properties for this vertical entity, starting off with a name. Well, we're going to call this stud because he is just the studdiest of studs that ever studded. Anyway, apart from rambling, we're going to now select a color. Now this color can be whatever you want. It's going to make it easy for us to sort of differentiate different components within our extruded product. Going to leave it as a nice happy cyan or cyan, never knew how to pronounce it to be honest. And now we need to select a material for our vertical entity. It's going to bring up our material list and we're going to go ahead and select 16mm MDF for this vertical stud. It's now going to ask me for my vertical spacing, and this pretty much is asking how far apart we would like our vertical entities to be. I'm going to leave it at about 600mm apart from each other. Next, we have vertical spacing type. Now we have two options for this, fixed or equal distance. So fixed will put a vertical entity every 600mm regardless of the construction panel length, while equal distance will have those vertical parts equally spaced out in that extrusion. So for this one here, I'm going to set that to equal distance. Now we have two options here, one called vertical use dowels or vertical use dados. And this is going to allow you to create machining with your vertical entities. For now, I'm going to say I want to have dowels set to false and dados set to true. Now next it's going to ask me, well, what kind of vertical association you would like to have at a join. If you have a look at this drop-down list, we can have studs, double studs, or 4 studs coming in at a joint at a selected extruded entity. I'm going to circle back to this guy in a bit. We're going to leave it as none. You have a scribe start and a scribe end dimension, pretty much offsetting where your vertical entities start and end in a construction path. I'm going to set both of these guys to 20mm, so my vertical entities start 20mm in. We also have some dado stop gaps, which is going to come into play when we use some dado machining in our vertical entities. We're going to hit OK, and that's now created that stud smart layer. Make sure he's highlighted, make sure our part's highlighted, and we're going to click on this apply button down below. Now my stud has been assigned that layer. Now it's going to ask me this entity. what is he going to be? It's also giving me some dimensions on that 2D dimensioned entity that it's discovered. And now we're going to add an extruded entity as we want this panel to extrude along our construction path. So similar to our vertical entity, we're going to left and right click in this area down below and hit add. Now, similar to our vertical entity, we're going to give this panel a name. I'm just going to call this one face panel. I'm going to give this one a different color, just to help me differentiate. I'm going to make this one a nice bright yellow. We're going to select the material, and with this one here, I'm just going to go ahead and pick a 3mm MDF. Now this one over here is the maximum linear length. This is pretty much saying at this dimension here, we're going to add a break. We're going to add a break between two extruded entities. We don't want our extruded entity to exceed this length. Extrusion spacing, this is pretty much saying, well, in between those breaks, in between those linear lengths, we can actually offset, we can have a little bit of a gap between those extruded entities. We can also say we want to start or end an offset within our construction path, maybe overhang our panels across the start and end of our construction path. We can also say whether we want to apply machining to this panel, and this is going to work in conjunction with the vertical entity. You can say that, well, since I've got using dowels as an option in my vertical entity, any vertical entity that touches this panel, there will be machining. Since there's going to be no doweling into my 3mm MDF, we're going to leave that as false. Well, and my corner negotiation is when it comes across a corner, what's going to happen at the joint? Are we going to have a butt joint? Are we going to have a miter joint? Or we're going to have a butt joint further away from the corner? Now for this one here, I'm just going to set that to a miter joint. We're going to hit OK. And now there's that extruded layer. Click on that and hit apply. Next, it's going to see another face panel. So we're going to use that same layer for this face panel as well. We can use the same layer for multiple parts if we need to. Gonna hit apply. Okay, now we've got a different extruded part, our top plate. So once again, we're gonna left and right click within our extruded entities, and we're gonna add another entity. And we're gonna call this fellow over here, top plate. Again, just to make it easier, I'm gonna give him a different color. Let's make him a nice happy green. We're going to give that material to our entity, and we're going to leave that as 2500. Now we are actually going to tell this extruded entity that yes, we would like machining to go into this entity, and I'll show you how we do that. We're going to hit true, and we're going to set the corner negotiation type to also a miter joint. We're going to go ahead and hit OK. Make sure that we click and highlight top plate and assign it to our correct part. Alrighty, we've got another couple to make. We've got our kick face over here. We're just going to call this guy here kick face. Going to give this guy, again, a color. Going to make him orange. Assign the material. And for this one here, I'm just going to give this one a 16mm decorative laminate. Now for my corner negotiation, I'm going to tell this guy to be a up before corner. Something a little bit different. Hit OK. There's my kick face smart layer. Assign that there. It's going to add one more, and we're going to call this one here bottom plate. We're going to call this guy, let's give him a nice happy pink. Select our material, another 16mm MDF, and again, we are going to add our miter joint, and we are also going to have some machining going into this one over here. We're going to select up on a plate, hit apply, and also for this guy over here. Now the moment of truth, and there is our extruded entity in 3D taken from this guy over here. In fact, if we switch this guy over here to an X-ray view, we can see in fine detail how he works. You can see there's that 20mm offset that I set for my vertical entity. We can see where it's breaking at that 2400 length for our extruded entities as well. Now, there's a couple things that we can do here. For example, I noticed that this guy's actually the wrong way around. You see, I wanted my kick face on the inside here. Now, that's not an issue. All we have to do is click in our construction path underneath our solid modeling tools, give them a right click and select reverse. I'm just going to hit yes over here. And you can see it's now reversed our entity over here. Now we're going to circle back to our 2D guy because you probably noticed this happy little fellow up here. Now this guy here is pretty much saying that at this point, this 2D is extruded along that polyline. It's actually dropping in our extruded entity at this point, not here. So we need to move this guy over here. To do that, we're going to left click on our product within our solid modeling tools. We're going to right click and we're going to edit. We're going to go over to this guy over here. This guy is our base point offset. Our base point being this colorful little circle here. We're going to tell this guy, well, I want you to offset 3 mil back simply by typing in how much we would like to offset, being 3 mil. It's going to update our 3D object as well as update the position of our starting point. Now, there's a few things that we can do to edit this. We can obviously adjust things like where our studs are coming in, where our extrusions are ending and starting. We can also add further parts to this entity over here. I actually forgot to add a bench top to this. So we're going to add a bench top simply by adding in a rectangle and adding that to our 3D. So again, blue pen, again, rectangle, and I'm going to click on this point over here, and I'm going to make this guy over here about 350 in length. I'm going to make him 25 mil. Now I've added it in 2D, but I haven't added it to my 3D object, and that's because we need to go to our solid modeling tools, go back to extruded parts, right click and add. We're now going to click on that newly added 2D object, and now it's going to bring back our Smart Layer Manager. And we're just going to do one more, I promise, one more material, and we're going to call this one benchtop. We're going to give this guy a different color because I just love colors. I'm going to give this one a bit of a blue. Go to our extruded material, and we're going to give this one a 25 mil board. We are going to make this corner negotiation here a mitre joint. Hit OK, and select apply. And there is now my extruded entity. Now, I made a bit of a mistake. I was meant to actually extend this bench top another 20 mil. Not a problem. You can actually select your parts in your 3D solid through this tree over here. You can see the parts highlight in your 3D model when we select them in our tree. We can also left click and right click on entities and edit them further. For example, I was actually meant to offset our bench top, so we're going to add a 20 mil offset at the beginning and a 20 mil at the end. Hit OK. And you can see it's actually set that back. Meant to be a -20, not a positive. So one more time, edit. And this time we're going to make that a negative value over here instead of a positive. Go back to our view here, conceptual. We can see that offset there. Now, there was one thing that we alluded to a bit earlier on, but we haven't properly finished yet, and that is our Dao and Dado machining. Now, I've told my vertical entities, yes, I want there to be Dados, and I've told my top and bottom plate, yes, let there be machining, but we haven't actually set any up. So we're going to go back to our 2D model, and we're going to click and find our stud. Now, at the moment, I've got all these rectangles in the way. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on this rectangle over here. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go over to draw order. I'm going to tell this guy to be sent to the back. That means now I can see my blue line is appearing over that entity before. Now what we're going to do is, because we've told our vertical entity, let there be data machining, we're going to now stretch this guy into our bottom plate by, let's say 5 mil. Now what's going to happen? Well, if we go back to our 3D, go to X-ray, we can now see a rebate appear. And you can see there's a 1 mil gap on either end. And that's because if we have a look at our vertical entity, when you add a dado, it's going to ask you for a stop gap and a dado width gap as well. That can be adjusted to adjust the gap to give you a bit more clearance. Now I've added it to the bottom plate. I need to do the same thing to my top plate. So I'm going to go back to my vertical entity. Let's click on you. And I'm going to stretch you up another 5 mil as well. And you can see now it's added a rebate in there as well. Now we've done rebates, but what about our dowels? Now we're going to start by drawing in some rectangles to represent our dowels. So again, rectangle because can't get enough of those. I'm going to just draw one over here to represent a 2D view of my dowels. I'm going to set how wide it is. The width of the rectangle is pretty much saying the diameter of the drill bit that we're going to be using for this dowel. So I'm going to make this one here 5 mil wide, and I'm going to make him go down 5 mil deep. And there is my dowel. Just going to move him across. It's going to make him probably another, I don't know, let's make him a good 30 mil. And from there, a bit too much. Move another 10 mil back. That's better. And we're just going to do the same thing. Just going to copy this guy across here. And move him 20 mil as well. So these are going to be my dowels down here. And I'm going to add another couple of rectangles over here. To be honest, just save myself some time. I'm simply going to copy these gentlemen over here. Click on you. And I'm going to tell you to go across here. Now, I'm just going to leave these as is because I like funny, irregular dowel positions. Now, I've added in those rectangles in there, but nothing's appeared in my 3D. So we need to go over to my stud and we need to edit, and I'll tell it to allow using dowels. So we hit that to true. Now, when you select that, it's going to ask you, well, what are we going to consider a dowel? At the moment, under vertical dowel associates, none is selected. We're going to change that by clicking on it, and we're going to click on those rectangles that we've drawn before. Those four there. Hit enter. We are now going to hit OK. And we can now see those holes appear within each one of those studs. Now, if we edit the position of those dowels, obviously it's now going to also update where they are in our 3D. So I'll move this guy over here, say another 20 mil. My 3D object's just going to regenerate. And it's going to update with those new positions. I'm just going to switch that to wireframe, and there they are on each stud. Now we've gone through editing our 2D object to adjust our 3D, but what happens if we need to adjust our 3D? For example, at the moment I can see here that I've got this joint over here, and I actually don't want that there. I want that to be one continuous panel. So what I want to do is I want to get rid of this. If we go over to our solid modeling tools, we're going to go over to extruded tools. And from there, we've got these tools over here that we can adjust our extruded and our vertical entities. Under our extruded entities, we've got this one over here, move our entity joint. Or we can even remove. So I want to remove this guy over here. So I'm just going to go over to a nice, happy X-ray view. And I'm going to click on this button over here. You want to click on the two entities that are joining together, hit enter, and that join is now disappeared. If I need to add that back in because whoopsie doodle, I can always add another joint in there by clicking on the entity and clicking where I would like it to start. So if I click over here, there's now that joint. Now you can also move it the same way. So if I click on, I want to move this guy over here, just click on those two entities where that joint is met, click on a base point. I'm going to click on this point here, and I'm just going to tell it to go, say, over this point over here. And there's now that joint. Now, vertical entities also work in a similar fashion. So for example, at the moment, I've got, under my curve, I've got a fair few joints. I've got a fair few ribs for that matter. I'm going to turn that to 2D wireframe. And for example, I would like to move this fellow over here instead of him just sitting there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to our move vertical entity along the path. Click on him, click on the vertical entity we would like to move, i.e. all blue here, and click where he would like him to go. You can even snap on to an extruded entity here. You can see that panel now move along your construction path. Even though I clicked on this base point over here, this button will keep it along your extruded part. Along the similar vein, you've got a copy function where you can also click on that vertical entity as well. And similar as moving, we can click on the base point and it'll move that entity along that point there. We can also erase vertical entities. We can also erase extruded entities through these tools over here. Now the fun is nearly over, but there's one more thing that we need to do. We need to add an end panel. At the moment, if we go back to a conceptual view, we can see all the nitty-gritty that's inside there. And now that I actually see inside there, I realize I forgot one thing. There's no cable holes, no cable chasers. There's no holes in there that's going to allow anything to go through. Well, we're going to have to add that to each and every one of those studs. How do we do that? We're going to be going to our 2D guy over here. And all we need to do is we need to add a closed polyline or a closed shape within our 2D entity. In fact, we're going to do a circle this time, and we're going to click and draw a circle within our entity here. Once you've done that, each one of those entities is now going to recognize there's a closed polyline within it, and it's going to close that shape out. So now I've got a cable chase in there. I can also move that around if I need to. Just using my Autocad move. Just going to move him a bit closer to the center. There he is. Now, I need to add an end panel because now I can see that hole, I can see that studs, I can see everything in there. So I need to create a 3D entity. Now, we're going to create a 3D entity with a 2D entity. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace over this with a polyline to start me off. So I'm going to go over to my polyline. Just going to draw a line over here just to trace over where I would like an end panel. Just going to put that there. Over to this point. There we go. And we're just going to close it off by typing in CL for close. Now there's my entity. I'm just going to move him out of the way. Just going to go over to my AutoCAD move. Pick a base point, and I'm going to move him over here. There is my 2D entity. Now what we're going to do is we're going to turn this into a 3D entity. In fact, I'm going to go over to this 3D screen over here. And there's that 2D entity I created. Now to turn him to 3D, we're going to use our extrude command. Click on him, click on our 2D object, and hit enter. Now I was going to ask him, well, how thick do you want to make this 3D object? And I'm going to make him 16 mil. There is my entity. Now I need to move this guy all the way over here. So I'm going to use my AutoCAD move, click on my object, move this guy just a bit closer to my entities over here. Like so. Now next thing we're going to do is we're going to go over to our Modify tab within our AutoCAD ribbons, and we're going to select 3D Rotate. Click on the object that we'd like to rotate and hit enter. Now we're going to get this little happy gizmo come up, and it's going to allow us to rotate him in any one of those axes. So I need to rotate him along this red axis over here. I'm going to click on him, and I'm just going to rotate him up. Now at the moment, if I hold shift, it's going to rotate him up in the axis that I need to, like so, in a 90-degree angle. Hit escape, and now it's going to move him. Probably easy if I do this in 2D wireframe. so I can easily pick my snap points. I'm going to go over to move, click on you, enter. I'm going to click on this point and move him over here. Now, the only thing is that I've added a 3D object, but I haven't added that entity to my solid modeling tools. So that's where this guy down here, supplemental parts, come in. Supplemental parts lets you add one-off parts to your 3D object. We're going to give it a right click and an add. I'm going to click on that entity that we created. I'm going to give that entity a name. We're going to call him end panel. And we're going to give him a material as well. And there is now my end panel as a supplemental part. And just like that, through 2D objects, we created a 3D extruded product within this video. Now, with that, we can create any kind of extruded entity as long as you can draw it with closed polylines or any closed shape within AutoCAD. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this has been as educational as it has been enjoyable for me to record. As usual, I'm Ludwig from Markevellen. Take care and have a wonderful day.